On a chilly night in Iceland in January of 1974, Gudmundur Einarsson started a 10-kilometer walk home. The 18-year-old laborer had a chance to dance, and he thought he'd walk off some of the booze. He was never seen again. Just 10 months later, in November, 32-year-old Garfinur Einarsson received a phone call at home and drove to a nearby cafe, leaving his keys in the ignition. Like his namesake in January, he too vanished without a trace. And so began the investigation of a truly bizarre case that dragged on for years to come. 6 people ultimately confessed their involvement and were charged with the murders of the 2 men, even though none of them had clear memories of coming into contact with the victims. This was also without any bodies or plausible forensic evidence being found. No clear motives were ever established. Both men shared the same surname. However, this was hardly startling in a country with a tiny population of under 300,000. In 2011, a thorough review of the case was ordered, and 5 of the 6 men were acquitted. Their confessions had never seemed to add up. Plus, some of the methods used by the investigating officers have been severely criticized. Suspects were grilled for days on end, often without legal aid, sleep, or food. At times, they were drugged, threatened, and heavily medicated. The eventual confessions were thought to be invalid, as they were most likely made under duress. As a result, the case is widely known as the Reykjavik Confessions, is the most notorious criminal investigation in Iceland's history. It also has drawn the spotlight to an extraordinary medical condition known as memory distrust syndrome, which causes a form of amnesia, replacing original memories with false ones. Why did 6 people confess to their part in murders that they knew nothing about? To get a clearer understanding of the Iceland Police Department's modus operandi, we have to go back to the late 1960s. In 1968, a taxi driver was found dead, having been shot in the head. Such violent crimes were pretty much unheard of in Iceland, and a nationwide investigation was launched. However, the police failed to charge any suspects and had no leads or motives. Many people derided the police for their inability to solve what was a shocking crime, and this meant that in 1974, the investigating police were hell-bent on bringing somebody, anybody, to justice. Both searches for the missing men brought nothing. When Gudmundur Einarsson was discovered to be missing in January, search parties were hampered by the harshest of conditions: sub-zero temperatures, snow-packed plains, and winds that tore through the body. After several weeks of fruitless investigating, the search for Gudmundur was called off. The search for Garfinur Einarsson later that year was almost a carbon copy. Again, police and search teams poured over the coastline, the local harbor, and desolate lava fields. Again, no result. By the early summer of 1975, the search for the Garfinur Einarsson was abandoned. Although the mysterious phone call prior to his disappearance made his case more suspicious than Gudmundur's, it was still assumed to be a simple misadventure. It should be stressed that going missing in Icelandic winter wasn't the most uncommon of events. Visibility was generally poor, and it was very easy to lose your way. The chances of falling off of a cliff or being buried under snow was very real. That happened throughout Iceland, and unfortunate missing were simply classified as the mysteriously vanished. However, the police investigating the disappearances were absolutely seething. Again, they'd turned up with a big ol' wad of nothing. They were determined to make a link between the 2 men sharing the same surname and the perceived double murder. All they needed was a likely suspect, or suspects, and they were back in business. In December of 1975, they got their break. Detectives arrested a young couple on completely unrelated fraud case. They were Sævar Sisielski and his girlfriend Erla Bolatodir. Sævar certainly wasn't unknown to the police, and in fact had been charged before for importing cannabis from Denmark. And despite having an infant baby girl to care for, both Sævar and Erla were whisked away for questioning. They were kept in isolated cells, and they were subjected to aggressive interrogation. One day, after no progress was made, the detectives decided to try something out of left field. They produced a photo of Gudmundur Einarsson and asked Erla if she knew him. When she answered yes, the police were stunned. This was the first hint of a lead that they had, and they pressed harder. Erla went on to tell the police that she'd met Gudmundur at a party. She thought he was handsome, and they'd hit it off. She also supplied the tidbit of information that the police were craving. On the night that Gudmundur had gone missing, Erla claimed to have had a nightmare. She remembered dreaming about Sævar and his friends whispering conspiratorially just outside of her room. The Iceland detectives immediately drew the most tenuous of links. They decided that it was quite likely that she wasn't dreaming and was merely suppressing the trauma of witnessing something disturbing. Something disturbing such as removing the body of an 18-year-old man. The detectives ramped up the interrogation. They started telling her it wasn't a dream. What else did she remember? A body, perhaps? Then came the pivotal moment in the Reykjavik confessions. Erla admitted to seeing Savar and his friends with the body outside of her room. At least that's what her confused memory told her. The police couldn't believe their luck. Without wasting any time, they immediately hauled Savar and his 4 friends into the station for intense questioning. A picture was starting to form for the police. Was this some sort of criminal gang that was operating throughout the Icelandic underworld, if there was such a thing? The first of the friends was Kristján Vidarsson. He had a criminal record for drug possession and burglary. Next was Tryggvi Leifsson. Leifsson was also no stranger to the police, having a history of assault and petty crimes. Albert Skaftason and Gudjon Skarfedjonsson were furthermore named by Savar and dragged in for lengthy interrogation sessions. And so began an extreme form of psychological manipulation. The days turned into weeks, and the Icelandic Six became more and more disoriented. After a few weeks, Vidarsson and Leifsson had confessed to killing Gudmundur. They claimed that it was a drunken dispute over a bottle of liquor. Skaftason admitted to driving the body to the snow-covered lava plains where they disposed of it. The police were growing in confidence, and they chanced their arm. An officer asked Erla if she knew anything about the November disappearance of Garfinur. She said that she did, and the other suspects were interrogated with similar results. This time, they confessed to killing Garfinur over a botched delivery of alcohol. Let's keep in mind that at no stage had any bodies ever been found, or even a morsel of evidence to incriminate these suspects. They were simply succumbing to a form of confabulation or memory replacement. They were forced to endure marathon interview sessions with teams of detectives rotating to keep that pressure on. The suspects were also imprisoned in solitary, sometimes with bright lights on for more than 24 hours as an added form of torture. To make matters worse, they were afforded no legal counsel, as the police and the courts were run by the same department. Erla had spent over 100 days in isolation, away from her baby daughter. The suspects were fed benzodiazepines and antipsychotics to supposedly aid sleep, but most likely only disoriented them more. In this state, we can start to see how they began to doubt their own memory. The police were insistent that they were guilty, and this slowly became their new reality. A forensic pathology expert has described it as a profound distrust of your own memory. All 6 were in prison in February of 1977. It was another 40 years before they were finally acquitted. The Reykjavik confessions remain one of the most baffling criminal cases in modern history. It also highlights the importance of proper interrogation methods in criminal cases in order to obtain true justice. But above all, it serves as a sobering reminder that under extreme circumstances, even the most intelligent and lucid of us can fall victim to tricks of the mind.